Let's talk about domestic transportation. Did you know we have no roads outside of inhabited places here in Greenland? Despite there are 80 towns and communities stretched out along a mountainous coastline longer than the circumference of the Earth, we have no intercity roads, no train tracks, and no Autobahn. While in other places one could basically drive for weeks from place to place, here that's just not possible. This probably needs to sink in for a moment or two, but it's not to say that you can't get around. Once you're ready to go, do as we do and make getting from place to place an adventure in itself. The quickest way to go to and fro is by airplane. Being that there's only one airline which operates domestically in Greenland, which is our national carrier Air Greenland, it makes narrowing down the itinerary options pretty easy. The Air Greenland Fleet is a special one. There's one single jet plane, an Airbus 330, and it can only be used for international flights to Copenhagen. Without getting into too many technicalities, this is due to having only short runways along the coastline. Short runways mean all domestic flights in Greenland are operated with small propeller planes with capacity for 37 passengers. If you're ever having difficulty blocking seats for a medium-sized or large group, remember that limited supply and high demand is always a factor. We always recommend booking as far in advance as possible. Believe it or not, even with their small size, these propeller planes are still too large to land in some places. In addition to 14 airports, there are 47 heliports and helistops, which are reached by 13-seater helicopters called the Bell 212. These flights are booked just the same as airplane flights, and sometimes they're as short as 8 minutes, which is a shame because traveling by helicopter is such a cool experience. There's one last element to air transportation in Greenland worth mentioning. For guests who prefer exclusive transportation, the Air Greenland Charter Department has small Eurocopter helicopters and large Sikorsky S-61 helicopters, which can fly any custom route your guest desires. If air transportation is the quickest, sea transportation is by far the most scenic. As almost every single town and settlement lies on the coast, and as fishing is the primary economic industry, sailing from place to place is like second nature here. Sarfaq Ittuk, operated by Arctic Umiaq Line, is a passenger ferry that sails along the west coast of Greenland from March until December. Over the course of approximately 3 days, the ferry makes 11 port calls between Ilulissat in the north and Qaqortoq in the south, ice conditions permitting. The stops in port last anywhere from 30 minutes to several hours, and the summer ship guide usually offers walking tours. Guests sleep either in private cabins with ensuite facilities or in shared cabins with shared facilities. There is a cafeteria on board that serves 3 meals a day, plus afternoon coffee and tea, and the multiple decks are always free to take in the sun and look for whales. Cruise ships are another way to get around Greenland by way of the water. There are many sizes of cruise ships that visit Greenland, from large 3,000-person vessels down to small expedition cruise ships and unique schooners. Some spend quite a lot of time in Greenlandic waters, typically choosing either the west coast or the east coast, while others make a few choice calls and continue to North America or Europe. There are a number of local companies in Greenland that sail fixed passenger routes or offer charter services in certain areas, like Disco Bay, for example. They typically use small and medium-sized closed boats, which are passenger approved for Arctic waters and can take 10 to 40 persons. Finally, kayaking could be a method of sea transportation for some, a bit of a long shot but not totally outside the realm of possibility, considering Greenland is an adventure travel destination. In recent years, a few expedition teams have been known to paddle the entire coastline over a few periods, with just the gear in their shells and their own manpower. Land transportation closes out the trifecta of various methods to get around Greenland. Most of them connect town with town, but in the case of longer tours and high endurance, they could potentially connect 2 regions. Nothing beats putting one foot in front of the other and powering your own exploration. In many places, lightly trodden paths lead the way from the outskirts of town to an outlying settlement, giving the feeling of going out into the great unknown, but with a destination in mind. Such hiking routes can be as short as a few hours to many days, and for the avid walkers and backpackers, several routes can be combined to create one great hiking trip lasting several weeks. Dog sledding is Greenland's original land transportation north of the Arctic Circle, and what an experience it is. It is one part nature excursion to see the mountains and frozen sea slowly passing by, and one part cultural experience, as each sled typically holds just you and the musher, giving the chance to chat about life in Greenland. Most dog sledding tours are 2 to 4 hours long, but there are also mini expeditions which span a few days with overnights in small hunting cabins. The modern juxtaposition to the dog sled is the snowmobile, a powerful and fun machine that covers long distances in a short time. They can also be used as support vehicles to portage luggage and gear while your guests ski, fat bike, or run close by. Taxis are another ground transportation mode, but we do admit that we stretched it a bit considering they can only be used within city limits, where the roads exist. Most towns have taxi cars, and they are especially good to coordinate service with airport arrivals. Hotel receptions and guest house hosts will always be able to call a car for guests who wish for one.